forced to spend money on something that won't have an effect seems to me to be absolutely ludicrous. Here's the government asking people to do something that's impossible. They're asking micro businesses to find £1 billion in a year.
Tax changes, fire regulations, statutory registration, and now EPCs. Is there anything else the UK government can throw at holiday let owners? Alistair Handyside from PASC UK is the special guest on today's Host Planet podcast, and his message for our politicians is simple. Gather the data before implementing policy. Listen in to hear about lobbying efforts, what owners can do to help the cause, and why people are dropping out of the sector. For anyone with an interest in the UK short-term rental industry, this is essential listening. Alistair, thank you so much for joining us on the Host Planet podcast. Let's start with an overview of your lobbying efforts. Where are we right now? And is the government listening to the self-catering sector?
That's a bit of $1 million question to start with, James. Thanks for that. General overview. I mean, I think the thing that we are have at the top of our list every morning at the moment is pushing back on the proposals to have a C-level EPC in order to continue trading as a short-term let. That is causing a huge amount of work, and we're pushing back really hard on that, whilst at the same time trying desperately to get them to move statutory registration to the next level, but I'm sure we'll come on to that. So EPCs is the biggest piece of work, and I will then bring it into a cumulative piece of work we're talking about. The question, are they listening? Well, you never know, but I would have said in the first sort of 6 months of the new government, the answer would probably, I think, would have to have been not very much at all. But there is some shifting on the EPCs. There was absolutely going to be no exemptions. Bing, bang, bosh, that's it. No discussion. So what's the point in a consultation was part of our response. And then going back with evidence. And in today's newsletter, the 22nd of April newsletter, we put again a lot of the evidence that we're providing them with about how EPCs, as they're proposed, won't work in a self-catering context. And there's some movement. Words like exemptions, which we have obviously been asking for from day one, we were told there would not be any on day one, are now up to negotiation. So I can tell you that they're listening. I, like everybody else, have to wait and see how much they actually hear. But it is a more open door than we were experiencing in the first 6 months, where they wouldn't listen to anything from farmers, from FHL allowances to winter fuel allowances. And there is a beginnings of dialogue with ministers taking a slightly different tone. So we are grabbing this, and trying to make it work for everybody as best we can.
Let's unpack a few things there then. So EPCs, energy performance certificates. As we understand it, the government wants to make sure that all long-term rentals meet a minimum of a C rating. The EPCs, I think, go from A maybe down to G or something like that. Yeah, G being the lowest energy efficient, A being the highest energy efficient. So they want to make sure that long-term rentals are a C, and they want to bring short-term rentals into that. Just explain to us what's happened so far in terms of the lobbying efforts, and because I know you've been doing a lot of surveys and that kind of thing.
Well, first of all, we needed to gather the data from operators as to how much it would impact them. I mean, if every single self-catering operator in the UK was going to be able to achieve a C rating from the minute they imposed the law, there wouldn't be much point lobbying against it. Unfortunately, 70 to 80% are not in that situation, and may struggle to get a C. It becomes more difficult the older the property, because older properties are very much more difficult to heat in the way that the new EPC regime, which was the first EPC consultation, which we dealt with before Christmas and after Christmas, is changing the way they do EPCs. And that penalises short-term operators over long-term operators because of the way that we operate intermittently. And so the heating systems will be very different. An air source heat pump may work in certain buildings, but it doesn't work if you need to heat the house up quickly, or you want to drop the heat quickly, which is what good operators will be doing. They'll be covering their insurance risk, 13 degrees, whatever it is, but they switch the heating pretty much down when people are out. Saves carbon, very sensible policy, saves money, but they might have the wrong heating system. So even though they're not using very much carbon, they would be penalised on their EPC. So all of this is covered in today's newsletter about how the heating systems that will be favoured work for long-term accommodation and don't work for short-term accommodation. Okay, we need to heat up a building quickly and let it cool down very quickly. It doesn't matter. Guests determine the heat in our buildings, not tenants. The guest pays a fee for the property, everything's included. And we see it. All of your listeners today will be going, "Oh yeah, I see it. They leave the windows open and turn the heating up." They wouldn't do that if they were a tenant and they were paying for it. There is no fuel poverty in British self-catering. So we gather all of those pieces of evidence. We've got a fantastic piece of work from the Energy Council. Again, I've repeated it in today's newsletter. It's very compelling as to why the proposals don't work for self-catering. It's not that we don't want to be a participant in greening the economy and heading towards a much reduced carbon environment. We do not believe that this will have that effect, not least that in older buildings, if you're forced to do these measures, you may spend the money and you may not get any EPC gain or carbon gain. And to me, that's a complete waste of money. So we are absolutely demanding an exemption that if there's no payback on a measure that you're being forced to do by the government, you don't have to do it. Okay, so there's a lot to play for here. We are, and you talked about listening earlier, and I think I'm going to be fair here. Must be fair here and say, normally when there's a consultation going on, the government would not be asking us to round tables to discuss it. Normally there wouldn't be webinars trying to get further feedback during a consultation. And we have been constantly in webinars and in meetings with the ministers, and all well chaired. I'm going to say well chaired, and we've been able to get across our position on this. And the language is slightly changing. As the government has said that they are going to exempt older properties. Again, no detail. Is that just properties that are grade 9 listed, or is that properties over 100 years old, for example? There could be a huge area for argument there. So there's beginnings of the sign of some change, and we will be pursuing it. Deadline is next Friday, the 2nd of May. All the guidance is in today's newsletter and previous newsletters, how to respond. Listeners who are affected by this, you must respond. We give you all the guidance on how to do it really easily. This is England. Responses to consultations get much more leverage than responses in Wales do. So please take part.
HostHub is a top-rated property management platform for short-term rentals. HostHub can help you increase revenue, improve operations, and ultimately save you time and money. HostHub has everything you need to manage your properties effortlessly and reliably. It will sync rates and availability across all the channels where your properties are listed, and it includes tools like automated messaging, team management, and expenses. It also includes smart pricing integration, task and cleaning management, and automated door locks. HostHub provides a zero double booking guarantee, 24/7 support with an average response time below 3 minutes, and a fresh and friendly interface that is easy to learn and use. And right now, HostHub is offering a 14-day free trial to any host or property manager who would like to try the platform. Head to hosthub.com/HCH for further details. There was a suggestion in the proposal from the government that if a property didn't meet EPC C grade, you could have to spend up to £15,000 trying to get your property up to scratch, but it would be capped at £15,000. Yes. So what could potentially the impact be? You're saying that like 70 to 80% of properties in the self-catering sector are not going to have an EPC C rating. So what do you think the impact will be if the government forces people to spend 15 grand per property?
Well, we reckon about just over a third of owners will have to spend the £15,000 unless we can get some exemptions. particularly that one I talked about, that being forced to spend money on something that won't have an effect, seems to me to be absolutely ludicrous. And about the same amount we'll have to spend about half that to achieve it. If you just take a very low number that the government calculates as short-term lets, which is 111,000, is one figure that they have quoted recently. We know it's more than that from the conversations we've had before, James, but let's just go on government figures. Their amounts, £15,000, their amounts, £6,800, and their amounts, 111,000 owners. Take our data from the survey on how many people are at which grade and how many be affected. That's almost £1 billion worth of EPC work that needs to be undertaken in 12 months. £1 billion. I believe the sector cannot sustain that. It is not humanly possible to imagine that happening. You know, I was always taught when I was junior manager, never ask anybody to do something that's impossible, and here's the government asking people to do something that's impossible. So we really do need to push back on that. You know, most self-catering properties, you look at a kind of a report from one of the big agents, they'll say an individual property turns over £25,000, you know, after mortgage, cleaning, maintenance, housekeeping, linen, blah, heating, blah, blah, blah. They're probably making 5. So if you make them pay 15, where does that come from? Would they ask a major multinational company to pay 3 times their annual profits in a year on carbon zero? No, they wouldn't dare. But they're doing it on small businesses, and we have got to make that more proportionate, more sensible, and actually achieve something. Because in a lot of those buildings, just having to do those measures won't actually improve their carbon output and won't improve their EPC. All that money will do will give them an exemption to be able to trade. Now, what's really interesting is one of the next meetings we have with government is to talk about enforcement of EPCs. Talking about enforcement of EPCs. They don't talk about enforcement of fire regs. Now, have we really got this back to front? You know, what in our sector is more important to a guest? What the EPC is, or is it safe? So there's a disproportionate, and this is when you get an ideology coming into play. And it's always been the challenge with net zero. I'm a green dragon, I run a really green business, but you have to give people manageable steps to get there, manageable steps. Otherwise, it just won't happen. And that's what we're seeing so much pushback against. So you know, we hope to make progress. I feel there's more opportunity for progress on this than on some other measures we've seen, and the team working flat out.
If house and property managers out there want to fight back against EPCs, what would you advise them to do?
We will be sending out to all of our agency members today the guidance on how to respond, tailored to be from an agency perspective. So the one that's out there at the moment that you can download from the website is from an individual property owner. The one that we will be publishing today is from an agency perspective. And then later this week, we will publish one to give advice to other associations that support us but need help to fill one in. So we'll be making sure as many people as possible respond to the consultation.
Fantastic. And we'll put a link to your website in the show notes. Moving on then, next topic, statutory registration. It's something we've heard quite a bit about. The government have suggested it will be brought in later this year. What do you think that's going to look like?
Well, we've seen the test software, James, and many of our agency members have seen the test software, and a good number of our individual operators have engaged with DCMS and seen it. And at the moment, it looks like it will be the following. It'll be a England-wide scheme, so there won't be variances by county. It will be the same price for all, so you won't have the crazy situation that we've seen in Scotland where counties can choose different amounts of money to levy. It'll be very low cost again, so you won't be seeing the craziness of Scotland. And at the moment, the system looks like you would be required, in order to get your registration number, which I'll come on to, you would be required to put up the key basic safety documents: fire risk assessment, gas certificate if you have gas, and an electrical document. You have to have those, so you know, it's hard to argue about not showing. It's like when a policeman stops you in your car and says, "Can I see your driving license and MOT?" Go, "Oh no, for God's sake, don't get fussy." you're supposed to have them. So that's a very good proportionate level. So annual, national, one price across the country, low price, and the most basic of documents. That's what we're seeing, but we haven't seen the confirmed policy position from the government, which is when they respond to the consultation. Now, that consultation closed in June 2023, so it's due, but only that will tell us if what I've just shown you that we've seen is actually it. That's what we want. Who would be opposing this? The OTAs. They like the status quo. The status quo lets them grow. They're very deregulation. I'm deregulation. I just want a level playing field for the people that do the right thing. So this, we feel, is a proportionate situation. The minister keeps saying this is what it's going to be, but until we see that written policy statement, which of course we are chasing, nothing is final. Confidence level, 80%.
It seems to be mainly built around health and safety. What about things like in London where there's the 90-day limit? What about things like making sure people have the correct type of mortgage? Are those things going to come into it?
There's to date, that's not been part of the remit of the English statutory registration scheme. When you hear MPs calling for licensing, that's much more what they're looking for, that you'd have to go through a much more complex process of getting the ability to be able to continue to advertise. And we don't think that that's necessarily proportionate. There's not that many people breaching it. In London, if they really wanted to deal with it in London, they can deal with it in London. As of the 1st of January this year, anybody's earnings through a platform have to be reported directly to HMRC. HMRC is the reporting of these people reporting their earnings. You'll very easily be able to see who's advertising for more than 90 days by the, so the checks and balances are looping round in the background on this. It's going to be very difficult to consistently break the law unless you go to the dark arts. And that's, whilst you have bad actors breaking all these rules, those rules will get ever more oppressive for those that were never breaking them, but then have to show they've got the right, you see what I mean? So we're trying to keep StatReg at a sensible level that will just detoxify the sector. Inland revenue can look and see what people are earning. If people are dodging the system, we don't answer for people that dodge the system. We want to protect people that are trying to do the right thing. So there are bits coming in to play that can join it all up. It just takes so long. I mean, I did go back to my diary. My first meeting with DCMS about statutory registration was 9 years ago. And we're told it's going to be another year. So if you want to look persistence, consistency and resilience in the face, you're looking at it. We will get there, James, but it just takes forever to get them to do things.
We've mentioned fire regulations a few times, but it feels to me, probably to you as well, that there's still probably a lack of compliance, probably a bit of confusion out there about what hosts and property managers need to do. What do hosts need to know about fire regs?
Well, it's all there on the PASC website. It's all in the free area of the PASC website. You can see best place to start would be the fire webinars that we did jointly with the Home Office. They're in easy to understand language, easy to find where the documents are, easy to find where the advice is. If you've got what is regarded as a small property, that would be 4 bedrooms or less on no more than 2 stories, then it really is straightforward to do a fire risk assessment. I'm not just saying that because I've done 1,000, but it really is. It's thumb latch locks, it's linked fire alarms in all the rooms, bar bathrooms and cupboards, some form of emergency lighting, and a fire blanket and a fire sign.
Simple as that.
Not much room for manoeuvre on any of that, but again, that's not. I really find some of the commentary on social media that it's really hard to do in those buildings. No, it's not. It really isn't. When you've got a more complicated building, that's be more than 2 stories, more than 4 bedrooms, or with open plan exits, it does get more complicated. Still entirely possible. I know I have a 3-story, 10-bedroom property with numerous open plan exits that we have made fire compliant. It's not easy, it's not inexpensive, but all the guidance is there. The old guidance that a lot of people said I'm not prepared to follow has we have managed to get from the Home Office what the new guidance will look like, but it is still in draft. Okay, and that was published on the 8th of November last year. Again, all of this is all on the PASC website. Our commentary on that annex, there was an Annex A to the new fire guidance for larger properties, specifically relates to open plan and explains there are a series of measures that you need to look at in cooperation with, in conjunction with one another, to be able to mitigate the extra fire risk that the extra size and exit create. So, if you're a PASC member, you can send your drawings in, and we retain Paul Bray, a wonderful fire expert, and we've just done another one again this morning for a new build, for a new member. And they've shifted the way they've done their open plan access so that it creates the same ambience for the guest, but doesn't require any of the extra fire risk amendments. You see, so you could, people ask for hard and fast rules. You don't want hard and fast rules, because then that building is not and never can be, and that building can be. The way that it's written reasonably flexibly allows you to interpret and come up with a proportionate, balanced approach to it. So the guidance is all there. People don't necessarily want to do it, and it may cost money, but to say the guidance is not there is no longer true. It's in draft, and we've had webinars where the Home Office have explained that guidance. Paul Bray has written information on that guidance. It is highly unlikely to change the draft guidance in any material way. There is a review process that it goes through. PASC is part of that review process. That might take another 6 months. But the document that will come out of the end is unlikely to be in any way significantly different than the draft guidance, or they would not have published it. So we have the guidance in order to make a self-catering, holiday let, short-term let, fire safe, and protect your guests, and protect you from your insurance company saying you're not insured. And they're all free. You don't have to be a member to get all of the fire resources. You do need to be a member to get your floor plans and your property looked at.
Check them out, everybody. Talking about your members then, Alistair, what's the sentiment like among PASC members in 2025 so far?
It's a bit dour, if I'm honest. Very few are saying bookings are so good. I'm thinking of shutting for a week in October and going to Benidorm. But bookings are coming in much later. This has been widely reported. Bookings are much shorter periods. There's a lot of price pressure. All that's widely reported, and it means that everybody's like a hamster on a wheel and spinning wildly. Those that are really putting their back into it are getting the occupancy, and that occupancy may well be also getting them to reasonably good rates overall. But you can't stop. There is too much capacity, and the demand is soft. So you really do need to work flat out at the moment to get those bookings as they come in. I have taken my eye completely off the ball of our own business during the course of the last 2 years, and in November and December saw the consequences of that in how much red ink we had on the calendar for 2025. And my wife, daughter, and I sat down. We had some new photographs taken because of all the firework, and we used that as a catalyst to completely revamp all the photographs. And then you go and you revisit everything, and then you go and reword everything, and then you go and remarket everything. And guess what? Bookings look much better. So all the advice we've given you and not taken ourselves, we've taken it ourselves, and it works. If you do it properly, you make sure you're expressing things clearly, and you do it better, and you update your TouchStay app, and you do all these things, suddenly it comes. And also just by going out and telling your regular guests that you've made some changes and that you've updated stuff, and then the regulars come back again. So I'm not going to pretend our bookings are super, super duper, but we can breathe. Whereas when we looked in late December, we were not in a good place at all. So you can rectify it. You just need to work really hard, I'm afraid.
I think you and I are both guilty of talking a great game and not implementing everything we talk about, aren't we?
No idea where I thought the bookings were going to come from for a
while. Moving back a little bit, the focus on the government then. If Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves are listening, and I imagine they are regular listeners to the Host Planet podcast, what would you like to tell them?
Well, we're back to every podcast I've ever done with you and every conversation I've had with you, James, is we need to get statutory registration done first in that reasonably proportionate way, so they actually do know how many there are and what these policies' impact will be. So I've told you that even if the number's a low number, they're asking micro businesses to find £1 billion in a year. It's not possible. They wouldn't do that if they had the real data to do it. They would come up with better policies. So we keep saying that get the data first. We're not just saying it to put you off. We're saying it because we know you're going to legislate, and we want that legislation to be better. So that remains the message. I mean, we met with Sir Ed Davey last Thursday or Friday in North Devon, and it's always easy for an opposition leader to say, absolutely, I agree with you. I get that. I can see how it's going to work. But the Conservatives said they understood Stat Reg. The Labour says they understand Stat Reg. Lib Dems understand the Stat Reg. I'm just sitting here saying, well, why the hell isn't it, happening? And then you may stop doing some of the policies full stop because you'll realise the harm that they will do. But so our message then has to become more than just get something done you're already doing, because that's a very easy message to ignore. Well, we're doing it, aren't we? So so we've done a white paper on statutory registration, which is available to everybody on the website, which is why, what, etc. We're now doing a white paper on the cumulative impacts of the 22 measures that we are currently negotiating with English and Welsh governments on. 22 different impacts on your listeners. And saying you look at that as a compound interest, absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. And this, we did a firework display, which we put on the website, and we put in newsletters, showing it as good impacts are green, medium are orange, bad are red, purple are unknown. And it's just a sea of red. Okay. So just showing MPs and ministers that we've had probably more interest in the cumulative impacts paper, which is in train, probably will be 2 weeks, I would guess, because we've got to get EPCs done first. That's probably the most demand paper from MPs who have any interest, and from the ministries, the MHCLG, that's housing, so that's where the housing law will come from. Treasury, that's where the tax law comes from. Net zero, that's where the EPCs come from, and DCMS, where tourism policy should come from. They are all dying to get their hold on that. So what we're trying to do is combine what the impacts have been. How much have you spent? Fire. We support fire regs. You can't not support fire regs, but you can't deny that 99% of operators have had to spend some money doing it. Then you take away FHL allowances. Well, the government's own numbers is that's going to take away £1,500 to £2,000 a year from every per property per owner. Then you get EPCs at £15,000 per. You can't keep this pile on without something bursting somewhere, and that's what the cumulative impacts paper will be, and that will enable us to go and talk about all of it as an impact. So that's our next big piece of work.
I mean, speaking of the impact, I mean, there must be people out there who are feeling overwhelmed with all this, and are you seeing people drop out? Are people giving up?
Oh yes, I mean, I've been able to say that's not been terribly prevalent for quite a long time since COVID, but the last 6 to 8 months, we've seen more people dropping out than we had before. And, I'll be brutal. I say someone who dropped in a year and a half ago, dropping out 9 months later is not a huge concern. What is a huge concern is experienced, genuine hospitality operators who have been giving, real support to local pubs, local attractions, regular employment to people. That's a real concern. And I think a lot more would have dropped out if the property market wasn't so slow. Go to any rural coastal estate agent and the windows are full. Try it. Everybody listening, try it and go and see how many holiday lets you can spot. The clue is the photographs often have towels and things folded on the end of the beds, which gives you a bit more of a clue that it perhaps isn't a normal residential property. And the kitchens are always a giveaway. No clutter. You can tell which are the ones that are holiday lets that people are trying to let, and they are numerous. There are a lot of people were trying to get out before FHL to try and get the benefits of business asset disposal relief, have not succeeded. So they're trading on not the best situation for them at all. Really, heart goes out to them.
What's a common myth about the holiday let industry that you'd like to dispel?
I could be provocative here. I think I'm seeing AI as the answer to lots of things, and I'm sure it is. And we use a bit of AI to help us improve and shorten papers. It works very well for that. But we are beginning to see the impacts of non-monitored AI on systems. So people using AI to monitor reviews, to monitor feedback reviews, replace staff as not actually being an improvement at all. Early adoption of things has risk. I can tell you that we're early adopters of a biomass boiler, and that was new technology in this country. And if you ask my wife, she wishes we'd never seen it. So, early adoption you need to be really careful. And so I would say that AI as the answer to most things is not true. AI is certainly the answer to some things, but not all. And I think you need to really balance and take great care and monitor the work that it's doing before you let AI be your chat box on your own personal website, because you may be very surprised at what answers it might come back with on your behalf. So check things, just like you check photographs. You get a photographer to do it, don't you? But you still check the photographs. It's the same thing. I don't think there's no, it's like dynamic pricing. You can't just say to a computer, take my pricing over forever and never look at it again. It's not that simple. You still need to be the manager. You still need to be the responsible owner. And then dynamic pricing, photographs, AI can work for you really well. So I'm now going to get Richard Vorton on the phone within 15 minutes, James. But there you go.
So what are PASC going to be concentrating on between now and the end of the year?
EPCs, statutory registration, cumulative impacts, and then trying to come up with more ways in which we can help our members either save more money or make more money, so that they have additional revenue streams or can reduce costs going onwards.
Zeal works with holiday let owners across the UK, helping them pay the right amount of tax and not a penny more. Zeal's team unlock tax savings for holiday let owners on the purchase, refurbishment and construction of holiday let properties. Zeal's experts also provide advice on a wide range of tax matters, including VAT, stamp duty, business rates, capital gains tax and more. Call 01633 287 898 or email hello@gozeal.co.uk to get in touch with the team. You can also visit the website for further details, gozeal.co.uk. Okay, then we've got a few questions to finish. Alistair, we have asked you these before, but we're going to update them for 2025. So your favourite brand in the short-term rental industry in 2025?
Right. Okay. I mean, I've always, given shout outs to Touchday and Super Control, but you only allow me one, don't you? So I'm going to go for Key Data. I think Key Data have been, with Sally, have been absolute game changers, in the same way that Super Control and Touchday were previously and continue to be. She adds such value with the way that she works and the way that she uses the data to work, my shout out will be Sally Henrik, Key Data.
Great shout out for Sally and Key Data. An individual in the STR industry you'd like to give a shout out to?
I'm going to give a shout out to Robert Kennedy, who since we last spoken has retired as with Melinda as heading up Supercontrol. Their contribution to the sector has been enormous, in many ways very invisible, the support they've given associations such as ourselves and also the ASSE, the Association of Scottish Self-Caterers, which we have an MOU with Fiona Campbell. Sometimes without their support, that would have been a very difficult ride. So that DNA continues. Daniel Saccadotti has taken over. I met him at the recent summit in London. DNA continues. But Robert, over 20 years, his contribution to the sector has been enormous. And everybody on Team PASC gives him huge thanks.
100%, yeah, an amazing contribution. Finally then, Alistair, your top tip for holiday let hosts in 2025?
Check your listings. Go back to the AI point. So many people are finding that, particularly on the very large platforms, they're using AI to update them. Always check your listings. We get horror stories coming into the office all the time about, suddenly the advert says they've got 4 bedrooms when it was supposed to say 4 beds. You need to check this because, as I just said earlier, somebody else may not be, and that person who may not be checking doesn't even know what your property looks like you do. So if there's one thing you do before you do anything else, the key place is where you get your bookings from, where you rely on your income coming from, whether that be OTAs, agencies, your own website or listing sites. Just go and have a quick look and make sure nothing's been changed in a way that could be detrimental to your bookings. That would be my top tip.
Great advice, as always. Alistair, thank you so much for joining us on the Host Planet podcast.
Okay, and all the very best for your rebrand and going forward with Host Planet, and we look forward to partnering with you on that, James. So take care.
Great to chat to Alistair Handyside about all the challenges our sector is facing. Make sure you head to the PASC UK website for all that essential information. And if you're looking for more free education, head to hostplanet.club, the fastest growing multimedia platform in the short-term rentals industry. We're proud to help hosts and property managers supercharge their businesses by sharing a wealth of free content. Head online to sign up for our newsletter, download our suite of ebooks, and listen to our podcast series. Until next time, happy hosting.